name is John Mulhern, and I'm the principal here in the Teagasc College. And today I'm joined again by my colleague Paddy Smith, who's a senior lecturer here in the college. And we're here to talk to you about apprenticeships in horticulture, particularly around the landscaping theme that is delivered within the apprenticeship in horticulture. So we welcome everybody onto the webinar. This webinar is being recorded for your information, so I hope you're okay with that. And you will get an opportunity to ask questions during the course of this short webinar. This short webinar will last about 45 minutes, in which we want to cover the elements of our apprenticeship program, how to get on the program, how to approach employers on the program, and how to learn on the program. So we hope you find it informative, and we want to give a short presentation now, which I will just share my screen with.
John?
Yep.
Paddy here. Just Gary's joined us there as well.
Oh, very good. Yeah, I'd like to welcome Gary Graham to the webinar as well. Hello, Gary. People will know Gary from the Bloom show in the Phoenix Park, which Gary was responsible for setting up, and also people will know Gary from Super Garden, the RTE show, whereby people display their talents in building gardens. So Gary, welcome. Maybe you'd like to say hello.
Thanks, John, and thanks for that introduction.
Yeah, good to see you, Gary. Hope all is well. Yeah, so we were just introducing the topic today. Today we hope to talk to the group about the apprenticeship in horticulture with a focus on landscaping in particular. So we're going to do a short presentation on the apprenticeship, and then we'll have discussion involving yourself and Paddy and talk about the industry and talk about how to get involved in the apprenticeship in horticulture. So I'm just going to go through a short slideshow here, and I'm going to I hope everybody can see the screen there, Paddy. That's okay?
Yeah, 100%.
Brilliant. So basically a lot going on that slide, but that's our flyer that's available on the apprenticeship website, which informs people about the program and how it's delivered. And I'm not going to go through much of the detail on that, but essentially a horticulture apprenticeship with Teagasc is a 2-year higher level certificate in horticulture, which is at the level 6 on the National Framework of Qualifications. So apprentices do 2 years of training with Teagasc and with an employer. It's what we call 80-20. 80% of the time the apprentice is with the employer, and 20% of the time the apprentice is in the college. And our college is located here in the National Botanic Gardens, and we've been training people in horticulture for many, many years and decades at this stage. So people from all aspects of horticulture are getting involved in the apprenticeship program, from nurseries through to garden centres, gardens and parks, estates, fruit production, vegetable production, and indeed hard landscaping, which will be our focus for today. So it's done over 2 years. The apprentice comes to the college for their block release. The way that works out, it's about 50 days in year 1 and it's 50 days in year 2. So it's 100 days in total. And the current group that are finishing their apprenticeship this year will have completed about 25 of those days online. So it is blended in its delivery, and that's to facilitate people coming from all parts of the island of Ireland really at this stage. And we do have apprentices from as far away as Sligo and through to Monaghan and Cavan and down as far as Waterford. So there's a big reach in this program. Okay, so I just want to show you some slides really about our location. That's the wonderful Botanic Gardens, just some slides there that was taken about a few weeks ago during a frosty morning. So we've access to the National Botanic Gardens, and this is our backyard, and this is where we train people in plant knowledge, which is the strength of the National Botanic Gardens. And really for anyone that's getting involved in landscaping, I think the knowledge of the plant world is key to that as well. So this is our backyard, and that's our strength in training. But we have a second site, and that's just a picture of Ashtown. Ashtown is our research and training facility, and that's located about 6 kilometers from the Botanic Gardens here over in Ashtown. And there we have extensive outdoor facilities, including outdoor nurseries and glasshouse structures, lots of areas for planting, student gardens, fruit and veg areas. So we've extensive access there also. So our apprentices would be trained partly there and partly in the Botanic Gardens when they're on site. And that's the first year group that came in last year. There was about 30 students, 30 apprentices that started with us last year. And that's Dr. Shane Brett on a plant walk with the students outside the curvilinear range in the Botanic Gardens. Paddy, I might bring you in here. This is our second year landscape apprentice group, and they are just finishing their second year program this year. So those landscape apprentices, they come from all over north and south, really. And Paddy, maybe a quick word on what you're doing with them there.
Yeah, this here forms part of their hard landscaping module, and which is 100% hands-on. And what we can see here is the students, they're building some of the skills. So they were creating foundations, understanding different slump techniques, identifying the slump, different types of foundations, different types of materials that can be used in the construction. So what you'd see here from this photograph, the students would have been building fencing, which then doubled up as a windbreak. But through that, they would have understand skills like transferring levels, creating levels, interpreting a plan, and also in relation to construction details, which is very important from any garden build, how to be able to design it and then how to be able to construct it. So this is them physically out in beautiful weather last September, October, building a garden feature.
Yeah, and that project, again, some of the stepped work that was involved in it there in those shots.
Yeah, I'll come in there again, John. So
Yep.
a number of skills on the hard landscaping would be different types of foundations. So from the photograph there, you'd see a step foundation, but also you would have seen a piled foundation that would have been used for the posts. The students then would have had to create different concretes. And again, I mentioned about slumps, but to take a shape, create shuttering in relation to formwork for creating the steps. Difficult thing to do is in relation to risers and treads. So a bit of calculations. So the students will have to do a little bit of calculations, but they'd also then have to be able to draw that and understand how to interpret again landscape drawings. And then you can see the paving. So they would have been creating paving, laying natural products, looking at the different bonding products, and then also in relation to then flow pointer in relation to jointing material. So it's a great example, outdoor, getting stuck in, working as part of a team, good communication, good leadership skills, and then delivering a project to the very, very end.
Yeah, so that's a very good example of what they've done with us, Paddy. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, that would have been students being assessed. So there would have been an assessment that would have been carried out. So they would have got to practice the skills back with their own mentor and also in the college. But then here we can see them being assessed individually, creating it.
Yeah. So that's the finished product now, and it's basically the windbreak around the outdoor nursery area in the nursery beside the glass house in our site in Ashtown. So on top of, we'll say, the outdoor work that they do, so people often ask, well, what's involved in the coursework that we do in the college? And this is just a screenshot of our Moodle page. And essentially Moodle, for anyone that doesn't know, it's our online learning environment. So Moodle is a platform that we use for all of our courses here in the college and the Botanic Gardens, and the apprenticeship is no different. So it's really suited to the apprenticeship model because the apprenticeship model is there's a remote element to it. So all of the information that Paddy and colleagues are delivering in different modules is hosted on this Moodle platform. Very easy, very straightforward program to work and to navigate around, and we give full access to the apprentices when they come on board. So those two slides reference that. So the next slide is just, yeah, Paddy, do you want to come in there?
As an educator, we put up learning material on Moodle, and we put up, we allow students then to upload assignments. Then we also would have some students will be doing exams on Moodle, and also we would actually have practice quizzes to make sure the apprentice, as they're going along, they understand the material and they can practice test themselves to ensure that they're keeping up to speed on the course delivery. So it's a great platform. And it's also any mentors can have a look, and the mentors get to and understand what the apprentices are learning as well.
Very good. So the next slide is really, I just wanted to showcase the progression of how the numbers in the apprenticeship is progressing. So in 2023, we took in 10 apprentices in the landscape sector. Last year in 2024, we took on 31 apprentices across landscaping, nursery, gardens and parks, garden centres and food. So this year, which will be the third year in 2025, we'll be targeting up to 30 apprentices. So that's sort of where we're pitching it. The first stage for employers really is to become registered. So if we have employers that we need to work with in terms of training apprentices, they must become approved. Now, it's a fairly straightforward process, and that's a screenshot again from apprenticeship.ie. How to become an apprentice employer, and there's 3 quick steps: registration, approval, and then recruit. And I spend a lot of my time along with other colleagues helping employers to go through this process. It's fairly quick, depending on, we'll say, the complexity of the business, but generally it's fairly quick, and if people can apply the time to it, it can be done swiftly enough. All of the apprentice information that we refer to is on the Generation Apprenticeship website, and there's a lot of information in the website, but once you navigate it a few times, you'll get through it. So that particular screenshot there is for career seekers getting started, finding apprenticeship jobs, etc. And I'm going to come back to that now shortly, because it is one of the things we get asked a lot is, where do I find employers and how do I find jobs to get started in the apprenticeship? So I'll come back to that now shortly. But before we get to that, we have a few slides here again, because the theme of this particular webinar is around landscaping. And what we wanted to show in this webinar was, well, what is landscaping about, especially to people who have never really been involved in it? So we've a couple of slides here which indicate a little garden build. Now, this slide is taken from a build that was done by students in the Botanic Gardens in the last year. And basically, we're showing you the before and after. Now, this project here, what you see there, is really the start of a project. It's a building site, really, and it's here in the Botanic Gardens in an area that we look after here in the Teagasc area. So as you can see there, there's not much going on there. It's pretty much a building site, but you can see that there is a start being made to ground excavations.
It's a good example, John, of a typical.
Paddy, yeah.
It's a good example of a typical back garden that you would have in a domestic urban scape in a house, where an employer, a landscaper, and their staff would have to encounter. I suppose the only advantage that we would have here, it's more open, where sometimes you could be restricted with
Access. It might be a bit better
in other settings, but it's typically a garden that needs to be rejuvenated, what an apprentice would be facing.
Yeah, exactly. What some of the apprentices would be facing into, this would be your typical raw template. So obviously it starts with marking up there, Paddy.
Yeah, and that again will be one of the skills that will be on the hard landscaping, in how to interpret a drawing, and also in the hard landscaping, the apprentices would have to be able to carry out construction details. They would have to be able to measure a site, find out where the boundary lines, what's the permanent features, looking at view lines, and then being able to then mark out a site for excavation for the next stage.
Yeah, so that's taken place there. And then you're into the laying the foundations.
Yeah, and again, there's about 8 to 9 different types of foundations can be used for block work and for concrete. And again, the apprentices would physically get to install some of them, but they get to learn about them all and all their different uses.
And
And
then
again, as you can see, safety is a key thing. We're very heavy on safety in relation to the course, and you can see the mushroom caps there, even on top of pegs for creating levels and that. So we're always very mindful of risk assessments and safety and teaching that to the apprentices, which they would then get in their own employment.
yeah, so from pouring foundations, we get into the build, and that's just one of the features in the garden, that circular little benched area. So the build has started there, Paddy.
Yeah, and again, there's a number of different types of walls, whether it's freestanding or retaining walls, and the different materials that are supplied by different companies that are available to the landscape industry in Ireland are used. And again, walling like this can act as a seat, it can act as a barbecue, it can act as a feature for a number of different things. So we try to get the apprentices to look at all different aspects of using walls and different wall material that's available, and also trying to look at sustainable products that's used in walls as well.
Yeah. So I just go back, we go from that to that. So we're getting closer to the finished item here. And obviously there's a big change in that, but it's coming to its completion there, Paddy.
Yeah, and look, it's keen to point out at this stage what an apprentice learns in the college. We will deliver as much as we can, but as John rightly pointed out, 80% of the time is with your employer, and they will be delivering a lot of the skills to you. But it's important to understand it's impossible to learn every possible hard landscape and skill out there. We will cover the majority of the key skills, while also your employer or the employer will cover the key. We will get to assess it. But it's a constantly learning, but we deliver and they're assessed on the major skills.
Yeah. So the build is coming to completion there, and you can see, you know, there's really good quality employed, and again, this is done by second year students, which would equate to apprentices. But it incorporates both the soft planting and the hard landscaping. So any apprentice that comes in to do the training in horticulture, their plant ID is vital in first year. Their plant propagation is vital in first year. They're exposed to soil science. They're exposed to all the elements of growing media. So in first year, the elements that underpin this build are taught across all of the first year subjects. What you see in here is what students and apprentices might get involved in their second year program. So it just goes to show what, you know, people that come in and they mightn't have any initial skills, how they can end up developing huge skills. And going back to the point that the apprentices that come into us, they're spending, you know, Monday to Friday working for a landscape contractor developing these skills. So they're coming in with a lot of knowledge. So there. That's sorry, Paddy. Yeah.
As you pointed out there, John, you mentioned the word exposed. It's exposed to working in the Irish weather and how to plan a job that you can carry out work when the weather is maybe not suiting for certain jobs. So as you can see, the apprentice would be exposed to that both in their employment and in the college. And it's great to be able to plan and watch the weather and plan particular jobs to make sure you get the job completed on time and the skill.
Yeah. So I'm just, again, this is a before and after. This is the other half of that garden, if you like. So again, a lot of work needed there. But the training involves, you know, paving. It involves the cultivation of the soil, and the design around the sets and the path. And you can see it's taken shape quite nicely on the right hand side with the plantings coming in and the mulching and the seeding. The input of the bamboo as well. So there's a whole lot of new skills being brought in here. The final product is always, you know, Gary will come in on this shortly, but the final product is always a sight to behold. And when we see the delivery, I'm just flicking through to the finished product now. That's the finished product essentially. And it's beautiful. And when you see the work that you know, our students and apprentices can deliver after you know, the time and the effort that is impacted on them from the staff and from their mentors, it's absolutely brilliant.
One thing I want to point out there is the way it leads into two other modules that we're delivering.
We just ask you to mute your phones, please, folks. Thanks very much while the presentation is going on.
I want to point out, it's great the way that this hard landscaping module leads into two other modules, which we would say is the financial module and also the capstone. And when I come from financial, is that an apprentice gets to understand what is a billing hour, what it costs to create a project, how long does it take, and then some of our apprentices then will use a project like this to help them with their capstone project, which we can discuss again at another date. But it's multifunctional. I know you're learning the skills here, but it's the knock-on effect and what other projects it can lead to and help you with.
Yeah. So that's the finished product, and that's where we started again. So you went from that to that, and I think it just goes to show, we say, what we can train and how we can train people and how they can learn in the elements of hard landscaping. I just want to just a couple of slides now before we finish, and you know, there's a lot of landscaping that people think is just around people's gardens, but I just want to shine a light briefly, if I may, on, we'll say, the urban landscaping environment. And this is a shot of our apprentices with one of our stakeholders in landscaping, really. And this is Barry Lupton here, who works for O'Brien Landscaping, a large company in Dublin, and they're involved in the Dublin Landings project down around the Docklands. And while people might have an idea of the Dublin Docklands being all, you know, large buildings, glass and steel and all of that, there's quite a lot of planting down there, and that's becoming part and parcel of many cityscape developments. So there's a lot of work that goes on down there, and amidst all the glass and the concrete and the steel of buildings, you get these lovely oases of plantings, which Barry and his company have successfully delivered. So again, apprentices will get involved in all of those elements, depending on the company that they're working for. They may be involved in some very, very high-end projects that will deliver huge projects which are of benefit to urban dwellers. That's just another slide in relation to that. Okay, so our last few slides then are focusing on, well, apprentices are always asking, or would-be apprentices are always asking, well, where do I find these jobs? So again, I refer back to the apprenticeship website, apprenticeship.ie, and under the tab Career Seekers, Find Apprenticeship Jobs, you will see this Apprenticeship Employers Database. So in that, you will find lists of employers in all apprenticeships around Ireland. And as we said at the last presentation, currently there are 30,000 apprentices working in different companies around Ireland, pursuing all sorts of different apprenticeships, and horticulture is in there as well. So the next slide will give you a brief summary of employers that are approved, which are presently today on the apprenticeship website. And these are horticulture approved employers across Dublin City, Cork, Dún Laoghaire, Galway, Roscommon, Kerry, Kildare, Wicklow. This is there for anybody to see. So you can see all of those different companies are presently on the apprenticeship website, and they're open to taking on apprentices. So the reason that slide is there is to show you all of these different companies across all of these different counties. And there you have Carlow, Kilkenny, or Kildare, Carlow, Laois and Offaly, Louth, Meath, ETBs. So they are all the companies that are taking on apprentices at the minute. And then there's Mayo, Sligo, Leitrim. You have 2 companies there. The next slide indicates where jobs are advertised on the apprenticeship website. So under Career Seekers, you will find this, and it is it's the filter essentially for the location or the apprenticeship type, and you can do a quick search and up pops this. So as of this morning, that's just an example of some of the companies that are advertising now, looking for apprentices to come on the program for intake in the college here in August of this year. Okay, so we might have some questions pertaining to that, But I think it was useful just to show these different companies in different parts of the country. All of these companies are registered, and if there's any representatives on the call today, we're happy to talk to them and to guide them through this process. Indeed, a lot of our apprentices are already employed by some of these companies. Paddy will know some of these companies very closely as well because you visit them, and I would know most of these companies because I would have been involved in getting them registered at the start. So what we're trying to show is that this whole apprenticeship, it's growing. And currently we have about 80 plus companies that are registered, and we have around about 40 apprentices on our program. So it's growing very nicely and it's growing very steadily. And we're delighted that all of these companies are on board. We're delighted that we can provide a program along with the employers. And this program was set up by the employers, and Gary, who's on the call, we'll talk to shortly, is the head of our consortium that set this up. It's companies like these that are leading the way in terms of taking on apprentices and, you know, providing the next generation of horticulturalists for the industry. So I'm just coming to the end of this now. Yeah, so they're all the links to the websites that I was looking at, the apprenticeship.ie, career seeker jobs, my email, john.mulhern@teagasc.ie and paddy.smith@teagasc.ie. That's where you will find us. And just to mention that these webinars are repeated at the end of every month on the last Friday. The next one is March the 28th at 12:45, where we'll talk specifically about the nursery sector. Okay, so I'm going to close off the presentation now, and I want to, and I'll stop sharing. And I want to talk to, if I can, Gary. How are you, Gary? And welcome to our webinar, Gary. This is Gary Graham.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. A couple of points, if I could add. I'll speak briefly about the ALCI, but I don't
yes, Gary. Yeah.
Too long on it. The ALCI is the Association of Landscape Contractors of Ireland, and was set up back in the 70s, 50 odd years ago. The reason being that the landscape sector really prior to that wasn't professionalized, shall we say, and was operating at a smaller scale. But back around that time, things really started to take off, and there was a recognition that there was a need to professionalize everything and to look at the sort of things that you'd see in other trades and professions. So with the electricians, you see recce and organizations like that. And really it's about ensuring that there is a body there that maintains standards and indeed works with organizations like your own in terms of sorry, just throwing this phone off. There's Barry Lupton on the phone looking for me, John.
Very good.
So the idea was to make sure that the landscape industry could regulate itself, make sure.
I think we've lost Gary there, John.
I think we've lost Gary. Yeah. Gets a pity now. I'm sure he'll come back in again, but I think he was just referring to the role of the Association of Landscape Contractors of Ireland, which Gary is the head of at the minute, and they have a very large body of landscaping professionals that do an awful lot of work throughout the country. I mean, their numbers probably number in the hundreds now, Paddy, and a lot of them would be, you know, taking on apprentices and students every year.
John, can I just ask you a question, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
If I was a potential apprentice in the waiting in this meeting, and I wanted to go about seeking to an employer to become an apprentice, what would you advise me to do?
So I would refer back to what was on our slides, Paddy. My first protocol would be apprenticeship.ie. I would go in there and I would look to see what's available in terms of, we'll say, yeah, I just got it. Great. Gary's had a power cut, but he's coming back in there. He just texted me. Yeah, but I would advise to go to apprenticeship.ie. I would look at the list of apprenticeship employers in the horticulture space, the one that I referred to. And I would do up a good CV and I would send it to them. And I think what's very important if you're seeking an apprenticeship in horticulture is that you target the particular type of training that you want to be delivered to you. It's nearly like when you're selecting going to college, you select a particular college based on certain criteria. And I think we all did that in our day. But when you're choosing an apprenticeship, equally, you have to select what is the best type of trainer that I want to be trained by. You know, what type of company do I want to be invested in? And I think that's a very important point. Now I see Gary has come back in there. The power has been restored. Gary, you're welcome back in. Paddy was just posing the question as regards how apprentices might seek particular employers in the sector. And I was making the point that, well, it's like selecting a college place. You know, you select a college based on certain criteria. It's the same when you're selecting an apprentice employer, I would contend.
Yeah. Apologies, everyone. I don't know what happened
No
there.
problem.
Power
No problem.
dropped completely. Yeah. So on that particular point, John, I wouldn't. If there's anyone on the call that has a particular interest in the landscaping stream, have a look at the ALCI website, and you'll see that there are members all across the country. My number's on there as well, and I'm happy to talk to anyone that wants any guidance or assistance with that. Some of them, as you've already pointed out, John, are registered. Some of them have positions, apprentice positions up and are advertised, but some of them haven't, but they are still looking for people. And we're encouraging them to use the website, but they're not all using it currently. But there are, I would say, members of the ALCI, very well established, good operators involved in all sorts of work all across the country. And definitely I can help make some contacts if people need to speak to them. What I really wanted to mention briefly, John, and I was reminded listening to yourself and Paddy, is about the diversity. And you know, we use the term, and you used it, about hard landscaping, and you briefly mentioned the soft landscaping. And that, as you know, is really only the tip of the iceberg. Because obviously then there's interior landscaping where you can actually avoid some of those wet days. And I did that myself for a year after training in the Botanic Gardens. Maybe just quickly, even using myself as an example, because I was one of those earn and learn type entrants into the horticulture sector. Because back when I studied in the Botanic Gardens, it was like the apprenticeship model back then. And we spent half of our day in the garden working, and half of our day in the classroom. And in second year, we were out doing work experience for all of that year, mostly in the parks departments. And we were paid the handsome sum of £36 old Irish pounds per week, which I don't know what the equivalent is. It's probably €100 or €150. I was delighted with it. There was money there to hand up at home, and there was enough money for a few pints at the weekend as well. And then, of course, we had all our nixers as well. So we did very well. But the point I wanted to make was that from my training in the Botanic Gardens, because obviously I had an interest in landscaping, I then went to work in Chicago Botanic Gardens, which is a whole different type of work, not unlike the work that OPW do in our own Botanic Gardens. And then I worked in interior landscaping, outside landscaping, garden centre, retail, and so on and so on. And then ultimately went back and said, you know what, I need some additional training. And I know you've mentioned that there are so many career paths even within horticulture. So I then looked at marketing and did a marketing degree. I did a coaching postgraduate diploma. Then I did a business master's. And what I could do was I could combine all of those. So it's not even just within horticulture. And now what I see is that there are more people who come into horticulture looking at landscape architecture and ecology, and working on biodiversity support. And I think that's a very exciting area, because there's huge work and scope there, and it's probably some of the most important work that any of us can do in the country in terms of looking after our biodiversity and finding ways to landscape and build and construct in a more sustainable way. So we're all looking at the the circularity of all these things. So all that has now are big elements of horticulture. So the point I wanted to make, whether you come in through the landscaping stream or parks or nurseries or whatever, never for 1 minute think that your pathway forward, your career is limited in any way. Because a lot of the skills are transferable, but having a good understanding of the basics of horticulture, of soil, of machinery, of plants, of agronomy, of all of those elements, they combine, and you can add and build on those. The other point I wanted to make about that diversity of options is that what I've noticed in my I've a 40-year career in horticulture now, a long time, and what I've noticed over the years is that, Eleanor, sorry, there's a house falling down behind me here. We have the power now, the house is falling down.
Sorry.
So what I've noticed is that the different type of people that horticulture appeals to. So if you think, oh no, I'm an outdoors person, but I'm not interested in machinery. I would have been that kind of person. Paddy would have despaired of me because I've only learned how to use a digger properly in the last 2 years, and I'm 62 now. After a career in horticulture, I know an awful lot about the business side of it. I know about the marketing, the sales, and the export development. All of those elements are there. Obviously, I've worked a lot with garden designers and landscapers and landscape architects. And within that element, you see the people who are creative, who really want to spend more time at the drawing board and doing research and so on. So it's, I'm never bored in horticulture, and nobody ever should be. And if you find, there's some element that's not really working for you, and you think, well, why did I go into this? Just hang on for a few weeks or a few months and have a look around, and you'll see that there's so many other ways to go. So I think that's an important point to make. The other point I wanted to make on that diversity piece, if you like, in terms of the different options, there are companies and we have them within the ALCI indeed, who are very small businesses where there's 1 or 2 or 3 operators working within that company, and it's a nice small turnover, and it's almost sort of like a lifestyle type industry, if you like. And there are people who want that, and I get that completely, who don't want to have a huge number of employees and the stress and the worries of all that sort of thing. And they do some lovely work. And some of them will say, well, I'm particularly good at design. I don't want to do maintenance. I don't want to cut grass. I want to be creating all the time. That's fine. There's a role for you, and those guys are doing well. And there are others who will say, well, you know what? I've got 10, 20, 30 clients, customers, and I look after their gardens. It might be large commercial type situations in business parks, or it might be small, family homes, a domestic type situation. There are those. And then there are the big players. And you showed one of those, John, when you showed Barry and O'Brien's and the work that they do in around the city and that. I've been lucky enough to get to see a lot of these spaces, and indeed judge them for competitions and so on, and look at the value and look at the complexity of the jobs. And some of these projects are multi-million euro projects, where the landscape contractor is employing an architect, a landscape architect, engineers, hydrologists, ecologists. All of those people are working to the landscape contractor, and that's very exciting work as well. If you want to look at the impact that landscape can have on our environment and where we live, and how it benefits us all. The point I wanted to finish on, John, I don't want to ramble on too long.
No, you're okay, Gary. No, feel free.
It's the biodiversity piece. Now, I no longer do Bloom or Super Garden, but I do a lot of work with tidy towns and pride of place, and I'm judging, and I'm around the country, and I work with some of our big parks and gardens. And what I can see a lot of people in horticulture doing now is to use their skills and to upgrade those skills in some place, and to focus on the ecology piece and the biodiversity support. And the conversation is inevitably about planting, about native planting and pollinator-friendly planting. And when it comes to the hard elements, we're looking at swales, which Paddy could probably describe better than me, and water gardens, and ways of using sort of engineered solutions to deal with water runoff and capture water and do all these incredible things, which we didn't talk about back when I started off in the 80s. So it's a very exciting, interesting area. And the other thing to finish off, so I think I mentioned I got away to Chicago. There are opportunities across the world. You know, so back in my day, we used to say, oh, if you've good experience as a working behind the bar as a waiter, you can travel anywhere. I would say landscaping is a much better way to travel the world, with a skill base and a skill set that you can bring anywhere. And I see guys who've come back here who are now members of the ALCI. Some of them have had gardens at Bloom and so on over the years, and they have fantastic business set up around the country, having done the travel and brought that knowledge and experience back with them, and now are running very, very nice businesses. So the possibilities are endless, really, and that's really the point I wanted to make, John, if I could today. I hope that's helpful.
That's extremely helpful, Gary. You hit the nail on the head with so many of your comments there. The diversity of landscape horticulture, the breadth of the types of projects that people can become involved in, the fact that, you know, there's elements within landscape horticulture which doesn't suit everybody, but I think within the industry there's a place for everybody who wants to contribute. The biodiversity and the ecological aspect of landscaping is only starting, I think. You know, the climate change agenda, which has become so prominent and we've become so aware of in a post-COVID arena, really shines the light on it. Well, COVID shone a light on the outdoor space. Everybody had to move outside, so that increased the awareness of what we can do with our gardens. So many people said to me, we're doing up the garden as opposed to doing up the kitchen. And that's great to hear, because it's great for the industry, it's great for your members, and it's great for people who want to become involved and show their creative strength. I mean, I think, you know, and you've been to the forefront with the consortium, Gary, that has set up the apprenticeship with us. And without your help, this apprenticeship probably wouldn't have happened. And we're so thankful to you for it. But, you know, part of the design of the apprenticeship was that the first year was designed to capture basic subjects within horticulture for everyone, no matter whether they're going into landscaping, nursery, garden centres, gardens and parks. And subjects like soils, growing media, plant nutrition, plant science, plant propagation, that's the building block of a good horticulturalist. So that's exposed to every person that comes into the apprenticeship, and that's what we spend our time training the students on when they come here to the Botanic Gardens. Paddy's strengths in landscaping, but also in horticultural machinery, health and safety, capstone project, financial management. The financial management alone, like that's something that we wouldn't have had too much of in other programs. You know, it certainly is in our degree program, but it's not in other, we'll say, equivalent type programs, but it's in the apprenticeship now, and rightly so, because this is a business worker-led apprenticeship. So these people are going back to help run and strengthen and add value to businesses. So financial management is an important element of it, and Paddy is involved in that as well.
Yeah, can I, John, and if you don't mind me just asking you one question. So if I was, I know
we have some questions as well coming in, Paddy, as well. So we'll go to the questions after this, because I'm conscious of time.
So if I was an employer and I'm here at this webinar, what grants or what grants are available to me if I'm an employer?
Yeah, so one of the pluses to the apprenticeship program from an employer perspective is that every employer that takes on an apprentice and runs them through the program for the 2 years, they get a grant from the government through Solace of €4,000, essentially across the 2 years. So that's the caveat that each employer gets. Now, you know, we would hope that might even rise in future years of the delivery of the program. But currently it's €4,000, which is €2,000 a year for each apprentice. It's incumbent on the employer, obviously, to hire and to maintain the employment of the apprentice. And that's, you know, the apprentice is an employee of the business, so they get paid every week or every fortnight, whatever it is. And that's a key difference in, we'll say, an apprenticeship studying in the Botanic Gardens and your students that study in the Botanic Gardens. Apprentices are working, they're drawing home a wage every week, but they're coming to college. Like, as I said at the start, we bring our apprentices in for 50 days in year 1 and 50 days in year 2. So there's a great collegiate spirit, as you know, Paddy. That group that come into us, they're part of a group, and they're paid to come into us by the employer.
Yeah, just a quick question in there from Sean.
Yes.
John. Sean has asked, is it acceptable once registered to advertise a vacancy for an apprentice?
Oh, yeah. So any employer that's registered on apprenticeship.ie, it's free to advertise their vacancy. And we always encourage our employers that are approved or in the process of improved, the first thing they should do is advertise that they want an apprentice. And really, I would say, whether they want an apprentice or not, they should advertise, because that's a real sure way of drawing talent. There's people on this call today and they're wondering, should they send a CV to an employer? And absolutely the answer is yes, because it's a way of forming a relationship, of communicating with the employer and finding out, is this the employer that will help me to hit my goals in terms of my career in horticulture? And vice versa for the employer.
Vice versa, I was going to say that, John.
Yeah, vice versa for the
employer.
apprentice
suited to your business. So I know me and you had discussions about this before, but it's also very important to have an apprentice with you for a number of months to
trial.
It's a good fit for both.
It is. I go to numerous apprenticeship fairs, and I always make the point to young people, you need to decide, is this the right apprenticeship for you? Okay, like we've had 2 years running through apprentices now, Paddy, and we've had a few that have dropped off the program. And primarily the reason they drop off is because they weren't sure, was this the right fit for them? And they didn't know the work that was being conducted in the employment well enough at the start. And we need to emphasize that point. You need to give it a trial. The apprentice needs to trial it with the employer, and similarly, the employer needs to trial the apprentice before they're nominated forward for the formal apprenticeship route. Absolutely, yeah. There's a question there, Paddy, as well. And let me just go back. Kieran asked, are you looking for landscapers as employers more so than places in other sectors of the industry, such as parks and gardens? The answer, Kieran, is we are looking for employers in every sector. In every sector, we've 6 specific streams in our apprenticeship. We have landscaping, we've nursery, we've garden centres, we've gardens and parks, we have fruit, and we have veg. So we're looking to talk to employers in all of those sectors. Okay, today was about apprenticeships in landscaping, and that's why we asked Gary to come on, because of his stellar career in that area. The next webinar that we will run, which is at the end of March, will focus on the nursery stock sector. Okay, now Deirdre has just asked, our colleague Deirdre has just asked as well, there's a poll on this Zoom call as well, and if you could take a minute to answer the poll, that would be great. It's just asking questions about your own situation.
Another question in there, John.
Yes, Paddy, yeah.
Does the employer have to pay the apprentice when they're in college, and will the apprentice get paid a travel allowance to attend college?
Yeah, so the contract of employment that's established between the employer and the employee, which is the apprentice, covers their time. It involves payment, but it covers their time when they're in college. Okay, so they do pay for them when they're in college. Yes, that's part of it. Now, any arrangements as regards travel accommodation, again, that's between the employer and the employee. We don't get involved in that. We can advise on that, certainly, but that's between the employer and the employee.
And that's why we'd recommend that you have a good working relationship a number of months before you commence the apprenticeship program.
Goes without reason. I mean, people say, I know one employer said to me in the not too distant past, he said he wouldn't take on apprentices unless he had eyes on them for 6 months. And that he would make up his mind. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Whatever works. Some people will know after a few weeks, but that employer said to me 6 months is his kind of probation period before. Do you want to come in there, Gary?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that point. I think it is very important for both parties, both the apprentice and the employer, to have that opportunity to get to know each other and see is it a good fit. a good match. And sorry, just because I don't want to be jumping in and out, but just to repeat that point again, that if there is anyone looking specifically at the landscaping sector, have a look at the ALCI website, and indeed reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to anyone with to provide any more information on the different types of business, even within the landscape sector, never mind nursery or parks or the others. So I'm happy to help on that.
Yeah, and I would also say that from the apprentice perspective, one of the things that's really important in the model is the mentor employee relationship. So in every business, be it a landscape business or a nursery business, part of the apprenticeship program is that there's a mentor nominated to help train the young apprentice, right? Now, a key part of that is time. And, you know, one of the most important resources in any business is time given to training. And one of the things we found, and Paddy might come in on this also, is that mentors need to give time each week to catching up with the apprentice and making sure that work is being done according to the syllabus that we have set out along with our consortium. And that's a very, very important point to make.
Yeah, no, I'd agree 100%. And it's also important for the apprentice not to be afraid or not to be embarrassed to ask their mentor about certain topics, or 'cause you have to remember that your employer or that your mentor has the knowledge, and if they don't have the knowledge, they know where to go to get the knowledge. So don't be afraid to ask. I just want to point out one thing. There's loads of questions coming in there, and
There is, Paddy, yeah.
if we don't get back to your questions, we'll now this because we're conscious of time, we'll send you an email with answering
With
the
the
question.
answer. The question on, is it possible to study remotely rather than traveling to college when on the apprenticeship? So the example I'd use there on that answer is the present group have done 100 days. And of those 100 days contact time across the 2 years, 25 of those days is online. So it is possible. It's a blended offering, but you would have to be present for each day in the college if college teaching is on the timetable. And the link to this recording will be on our website, and previous webinars will be on our website very, very shortly. Yeah. The other question is, wasn't aware different areas of horticulture were covered. Yeah, so the fruit, yeah, so the next webinar we'll focus on nursery. The one after that in April will be on the gardens and parks, and then in May and June we'll cover the edible side of horticulture, which will be fruit and veg. But we'll have that up on our website as well. Okay, I think that's the questions there. But if any others are coming in that we didn't get to, as Paddy said, we will send those answers directly to the people. Okay, now that's our time, Paddy and Gary. I think that wraps up, because people probably want to get back to the day job after listening to us during their lunch. And I hope you enjoyed your lunch, and I hope you learned something during this webinar. My final comment is that I think apprenticeships in horticulture, they're not just a job. They're a pathway to a very rewarding career. It's a job that you can make a real difference to the economy, to the green economy, which is often mentioned now in the narrative. And as I've said to people, this is a chance to get involved in the green economy and maybe get away from the screen economy. But people will laugh at me because this is a Zoom call and we all have to deal with the screen economy. But no, there's lots of opportunity. There's great opportunities in the landscape sector, garden design, or the broader horticultural sector. It's a very exciting opportunity. We're very excited about what it can offer. It's not for everyone, but then again, we have courses in our college that suits a multitude of people. And our next open day is on March the 20th, and you'll see the ability to register for that on Eventbrite. So that's all.
I just like to
Paddy?
say one. Yeah, my closing comment would be, look, is earn and learn. We all know the world we're living in at the moment, and the Irish climate and the costs of everything, but it's an opportunity to get a qualification while you earn, which I think is very, very important.
Well said, Paddy. Yeah, thank you for that.
It doesn't end there. There's also progression, that you can progress to a level 7 and further once you get your apprenticeship course.
Yeah,
Just maybe just to throw in on that just very quickly,
Gary, yeah.
Paddy, all of my additional learning and training and degrees and masters, that was all done part-time in the evenings and weekends. So at no point did I ever really stop earning, because that can be a challenge, I know, for a young person who's afraid to tell, to have to go back to college and give all that up. So that is very much a possibility.
And I would say the majority of our apprentices currently would have been the same. There would have been the fear factor of maybe age and having commitments with the cost of living, but that's why they're picking this way of getting qualification, is earn and learn.
Absolutely. Okay, folks, listen, thank you very much, Paddy. Thanks, Gary. Thanks to Deirdre. Deirdre Walsh is in the background helping with questions, and Emma is online as well helping with questions in our office. So thanks to all the team for putting today's webinar together. And if you want to join us again, we'll be online on the next webinar, March the 28th at 12:45 to talk about the nursery sector. Okay. Thank you so much, folks. Have a good evening and have a good weekend. All the best from the Botanic Gardens. Bye now.